Daf Yomi, tractate Zevachim, page 42b, top of the page, with the words V'ha Bain Katani Kasha. V'ha Bain Katani Kasha. The Gemara raises a difficulty. How can Rav Ashi explain the Braita as referring to a case where the high priest had an improper intention during the first, second, and third sets of sprinkling? But doesn't the Braita teach if the priest had an intention that can render the offering pigul, whether during the first set of presentations, whether during the second set, or whether during the third set? This indicates that he did not have improper intent during all the sprinklings, but only in part of them. The Gemara comments, indeed, this is difficult, as the wording of the Braita does not suit his interpretation. Amamar Omer Pigul Mechayv al Kois Mechti Kois Lemechayv al Shikru Kom Matirov Damamar Ki Hatzos Kosher Kach Hatzos Pasul Matzos Kosher Achir Yikrevu Kol Matirov Av Hatzos Pasul Achir Yikrevu Kol Matirov. The Gemara returns to discuss the Braita that addresses the blood presented inside the sanctuary. The master said that if the high priest had an improper intention in one of the sets of presentations, for example, inside the Holy of Holies, Rabbi Meir says the offering is pigul, and one is liable to receive karet for its consumption, despite the fact that he performed the rest of the rite silently. The Gemara asks, now, consider, one is not liable to receive karet unless all the permitting factors of the offering have been sacrificed. Meaning, if the whole service is completed, including the presentation of the blood, meaning if the whole service is completed, including the presentation of the blood. It wasn't asking, it was just saying if the whole service was completed, including the presentation of the blood. As the master said, as is. The acceptance of a valid offering, so is the lack of acceptance of a disqualified offering. Just as there is no acceptance of a valid offering unless all its permitting factors have been sacrificed, so too, there is no lack of acceptance of a disqualified offering, meaning it is not considered pigul, it's not rendered pigul unless all its permitting factors have been sacrificed. That is to say, in the absence of one of its permitting factors, it does not become pigul. But here, in the case of the bowl or coat of Yom Kippur, since he intended to burn the offering beyond its designated time, while he was sprinkling the blood inside the Holy of Holies, the sprinkling is not valid, and therefore the high priest is considered like one who did not sprinkle the blood, as every one of the sprinklings of the blood of an innocent offering is indispensable. If so, when he sprinkles the blood again, later in the sanctuary, on the curtain and the inner altar, it is as though he is merely sprinkling water and not the blood of the offering. Consequently, the permitting factors of the offering have not been sacrificed, and therefore the offering should not be rendered pigul. Rabbah says you find it in a case of 4 bulls and of 4 goats. After sprinkling blood inside the Holy of Holies, with the intent to burn the offering beyond its designated time, the blood spilled. Since the priest did not use that blood again, the service inside the Holy of Holies was completed, and that permitting factor was performed properly. He then had to slaughter another bull and goat for the other sprinklings inside the sanctuary, which he again performed with improper intent, and again the blood spilled. The same sequence repeated itself in the sprinklings on the inner altar and on the top of the altar. In this manner, each permitting factor was performed properly. Rava said, you may even say that this is a case where there is one bull and one goat, as the sprinkling affects acceptance with regard to the offering status of pigul. In other words, even though the high priest sprinkled the blood inside the Holy of Holies with an improper intention, and thereby disqualified the offering, nevertheless, since he completed the service, he is considered as having sacrificed all the permitting factors with regard to pigul. 43, Tanya 47, Hakiman Amar out of Mekaronois. The Braita mentioned that there are 43 presentations of the blood of the bull and the goat of Yom Kippur. The Gemara asks, but isn't it taught otherwise in a different Braita that there are 47 presentations of that blood? The Gemara answers, this statement that there are 43 presentations is in accordance with the opinion that the one who says that the high priest mixes the blood of the bull and the goat before placing it on the corners of the inner altar, rather than placing the blood of each one separately. And that statement, that there are 47 presentations, is in accordance with the opinion of the one who says the high priest does not mix the two types of blood before placing it on the corners, but sprinkles 4 times from the blood of the bull and another 4 times from the blood of the goat, and only after mixes the blood of the 2 animals for placement on the top of the altar. Now the Gemara is going to come with another difficulty, but it isn't taught yet in another Braita that there are 48 presentations. This statement that there are 48 presentations is in accordance with the opinion of the one who says that the pouring of the remainder of the blood on the base of the external altar is indispensable, and therefore this act is added to the total. That statement that there are only 47 presentations is in accordance with the opinion of the one who says that the pouring of the remainder of the blood is not indispensable. Wait, what was the 48? This statement, there are 48 presentations according to the opinion of the one who says the pouring of the remainder of the blood on the base of the altar is indispensable. You have to pour the remainder. So the remainder of the blood in the external altar is 48. That's another presentation. Must be. And this one, it says that you don't have to pour it, so it's not, you don't have to do it. You could, it does not ma'akev. Okay, got that. The Gemara raised an objection to Rabbi Shimon ben Lakish's understanding of Rabbi Meir's opinion that one cannot render an offering pigul with an improper intention during the performance of half a permitting factor from Braita discussing pigul of the meal offering, which states, in what case is this statement said, meaning that if the priest had an improper intention during the performance of one of its services, the offering is pigul, despite the fact that he performed the rest of the services silently, when he had the improper intention in the removal of the handful or in the placement of the handful in a service vessel or in the walking with the handful to the altar. Rabbi Meir Omer Pigul v'chayavin alav kares. But if he came to perform the burning of the handful and the frankincense, and he presented the handful on the altar with an improper intention, and the frankincense he presented silently, or he presented the handful silently and the frankincense he presented with an improper intention, Rabbi Meir says the offering is pigul and one is liable to receive karet for consuming it. And the rabbis say There is no liability to receive karet unless the priest had an improper intention that can render the offering pigul during the performance of the entire burning factor. Katani miha esa koin es bishtika vesoloin machshava upalik eva kavanas and levan machshava. In any event, the Braita teaches, or he presented the handful silently and the frankincense he presented with improper intention, and yet Rabbi Meir disagrees with the ruling of the rabbis and says that the offering is pigul. This indicates that the decisive factor, according to Rabbi Meir, is not that the priest continues his initial intent, but that one can render an offering pigul during the performance of having permitting factor. The Gemara answers, say and explain the Braita as follows. Or he presented the handful silently after he had already presented the frankincense with an improper intention. In this case, the offering is pigul because he performed the second action with his initial intent. Chadash, dahainu reisha, ve'od, hatanyo, v'achakach kashya. The Gemara refutes this interpretation. One counterclaim is that if this is what the Braita is saying, this is exactly the same case as the first clause. And furthermore, isn't it taught explicitly in another Braita, and afterward he presented the frankincense with an improper intention? The Gemara states, indeed, this is difficult for the opinion of Rabbi Shimon ben Lakish, who claims that according to Rabbi Meir, one cannot render an offering pigul during the performance of half the permitted factor. And that's the end of that. And now we start a new Mishnah, the bottom of the last line of 42b. Mishnah states, "Ve'elu dvarim she'en chayovin aleihem mishum pigul, hakometz, ve'ketoires, and levoina." And these are the items for which one is not liable to receive karet due to violation of the prohibition of pigul. One is liable to receive karet only if he partakes of an item that was permitted for consumption or for the altar by another item. As for the items listed here, either nothing else renders them permitted for consumption or for the altar, or they themselves render other items permitted. They are as follows: the handful of flour, which permits consumption of the meal offering; the incense, which is burned in its entirety without another item rendering it permitted for the altar; the frankincense, which is burned together with the handful of the meal offering. And to be continued, Bezrat Hashem, in the next Daf, in the next Amar.